Jiu Jitsu. Jiu Jitsu works best when people get close. It's not about starting fights or looking for takedowns. It's about surviving when someone grabs you, drags you down, or tackles you onto the pavement. It gives you structure in a situation where most people panic. You learn how to clinch safely to stop wild punches, how to stay on your feet when someone rushes you, and how to escape if you end up on the ground. The main goal isn't to submit anyone, it's to avoid getting hurt and to stand back up when it's safe. That's what real-world Jiu Jitsu looks like. When fights get messy, Jiu Jitsu teaches you to manage distance and control one person at a time. You can frame with your arms to keep punches away, control their posture, or clinch and drive them into a wall to slow things down. If you fall, the focus shifts to protection, staying calm, closing the distance, and using your guard play only long enough to stand up. The same techniques that win tournaments become tools to make space and leave. Chokes and joint locks are there, but they're last resorts. On concrete, you don't want to be rolling around or holding someone in a submission while his friend is kicking you in the head. The smartest move isn't finishing, it's escaping. That's the realistic side most people ignore. On the mats, it's one-on-one with rules and soft flooring. On the street, there's glass, curbs, and people yelling. You might slip, get grabbed from behind, or have someone charging at you with no technique at all. That's where Jiu Jitsu shines. You learn to breathe, to stay calm under pressure, and to recognize danger faster than someone who's never trained. The truth is, Jiu Jitsu gives you an advantage in control, not invincibility. It helps when one person attacks and you need to neutralize them quickly and get away. Against multiple people or someone armed, the best Jiu Jitsu move is usually to disengage and run. Real practitioners understand that survival is the goal, not domination. When chaos breaks out and someone grabs or swings at you, no art brings more calm to the storm than Jiu Jitsu, but only if you use it smart. Boxing. Boxing is the art of simplicity done perfectly. No kicks, no knees, no fancy tricks, just timing, balance, and precision with your hands. But when it comes to real-world self-defense, those fundamentals are exactly what make it so effective. Most fights start standing, and they usually start fast. That first swing decides everything, and boxing trains you to stay calm when fists start flying. You learn to move your head, control distance, and throw sharp punches that land clean before the other person even knows what happened. A well-timed jab to the nose stuns someone instantly, giving you space to escape or finish it if you have to. A straight right can end a fight before it even begins. The key is accuracy, not power. Street fights don't last long, and boxers know how to land clean while avoiding chaos. Their footwork keeps them balanced, their hands protect their head, and their instincts tell them when to step in or back away. That kind of composure is rare when adrenaline hits. What boxing really gives you is control over that adrenaline. Most untrained people swing wild, telegraphing every move, while a trained boxer sees the openings and reacts in split seconds. Slipping punches, pivoting out of danger, keeping your chin tucked. These habits can mean the difference between walking away or getting caught. And because boxing builds real conditioning, you don't gas out after 20 seconds of panic. You can move, defend, and breathe while the other person burns out. Of course, boxing has its limits. It doesn't deal with takedowns, grabs, or weapons. If someone rushes you into a wall or grabs your legs, boxing alone might not save you. That's why the best fighters mix it with wrestling or jiu-jitsu for complete coverage. But if you're on your feet, one-on-one, nothing teaches you how to stay calm and hit clean like boxing. It gives you the timing, the confidence, and the instinct to act before panic takes over. In the street, you don't need to be Mike Tyson. You just need to understand distance, stay composed, and land first. Boxing doesn't teach you to fight forever. It teaches you to fight smart, end things fast, and walk away before the situation gets worse. MMA. Mixed martial arts isn't just another fighting style, it's the evolution of them all. What started as a brutal experiment in the early 1990s with the Ultimate Fighting Championship was meant to answer one simple question: which martial art actually works in a real fight? The early days were raw. There were almost no rules, no gloves, and no weight classes. You had karate guys fighting wrestlers, boxers fighting jiu-jitsu black belts. But as the sport evolved, so did the athletes. MMA became the testing ground where only what worked in real combat survived. Today, MMA represents the ultimate blend of skills: striking, wrestling, submissions, and cage awareness where everything has to work together. You can't just be a boxer or a grappler or a kicker. You have to know how to stop takedowns, throw clean strikes, and recover when things go bad. It's not just technique. It's adaptability. Every second, you're solving a new problem while someone's trying to take your head off. That's what makes it the most complete form of fighting there is. When it comes to the street, that adaptability is what makes MMA so effective. It teaches you how to handle chaos. You learn to clinch, strike, defend, and escape all in one motion. The conditioning is next level too. Most people gas out after 10 seconds of adrenaline, but mixed martial artists are built to push through exhaustion and stay functional. That alone can decide who walks away, but it's not without its downside. Mixed martial artists still train for rules. In a real fight, Thai, there are no rounds, no weight classes, and no mats. Concrete changes everything. So while MMA gives you the best all-around skill set, it's still important to remember the difference between the cage and the street. Still, no other system has pressure-tested techniques like MMA has. It's the art that forced every martial art to evolve. It teaches striking from boxing and Muay Thai, takedowns from wrestling, submissions from Jiu Jitsu, and the mindset of staying calm in pure chaos. In the street, that mindset might be your most valuable weapon. Judo. Judo is the art of making someone fall on your terms. Founded by Jigoro Kano in the late 1800s, it refined traditional jujutsu into a system built on balance, timing, and the principle of off-balancing your opponent, so a small movement turns into a clean throw. The toolkit is simple and brutal. Entries, grips, hip and leg turns, foot sweeps, and a handful of pins and chokes once you hit the ground. What makes Judo so effective on the street is that a single well-timed throw can end a fight instantly without needing to trade punches. Limits are still real, though. Throws onto hard surfaces can cause head injuries if you're reckless, and Judo's grip-first training doesn't automatically cover strikes or knives. It shines when you need to stop a forward charge, shut down a grab, or control one opponent long enough to escape. Pairing basic striking awareness and takedown defense with your Judo closes the gaps, because when the clinch collapses into chaos, knowing how to off-balance someone and decide whether to finish or flee is the difference between walking away and getting stuck. Muay Thai. Muay Thai is the art built for brutal, close-range effectiveness. Born in Thailand as battlefield and village fighting, it grew into a system that uses fists, elbows, knees, and shins, the so-called 8 limbs, to punish anyone who tries to stand and trade. What makes it so useful is its honesty. Drills are simple, and the weapons are designed to stop a fight quickly. A clean elbow to the temple, a head knee from the clinch, or a low kick to the lead leg will change the fight in an instant. That's why fighters who train Muay Thai don't look for pretty points. They train to end things. If a Muay Thai fighter did end up in a street fight, here's why their skill set often helps and where it falls short. Their striking is powerful with combinations from elbows, knees, and low kicks that land in tight spaces and that can end a confrontation fast. The clinch instincts for closing distance and controlling posture translate naturally to close quarters fights where long punches don't land. A clean elbow or a planted low kick can stop someone cold, and the conditioning and calm under pressure that come from rounds of sparring give them a huge edge when adrenaline spikes. That said, Muay Thai isn't always optimized for street realities. Fighters don't train for multiple attackers or knife threats as part of their daily drills. Techniques that work brilliantly in the ring need room and timing that rarely exist in an alley. Low kicks assume a shot opponent and solid footing. Concrete and shoes change how those strikes behave. And once the fight goes to the ground, Muay Thai offers little by itself, and wrestling or grappling skills are needed to defend takedowns and escape pins. So the practical takeaway: Muay Thai makes you dangerous and confident on your feet, but it's a single tool. In a real-world scramble, the Muay Thai fighter who fares best is the one who instinctively uses short weapons like elbows, knees, low kicks, and who controls space and then disengages. The real advantage comes when Muay Thai is combined with takedown defense or basic grappling, and taught with the mindset of stopping and leaving rather than fighting a prolonged battle. Wrestling. Wrestling is one of the oldest combat systems humans developed, and its value is brutally practical. At its core, wrestling teaches takedowns, balance, clinch control, and the ability to dictate where fights happen. That skill to choose the terrain is everything. If you shoot a double leg, you decide whether the fight stays standing or ends on the pavement. If you sprawl on a shot, you take the legs away and keep yourself upright. A single slam onto hard ground can end a confrontation without you trading strikes. Top pressure buys time to breathe, call for help, or disengage while the other person struggles to get free. What makes wrestlers so useful outside the gym is simple. The skills become habits. Years of drilling build automatic reactions, so when adrenaline spikes, you don't have to think. You just move. Their takedowns are deliberately simple and brutal. Once on top, wrestlers pin weight, control hips, and use cross faces and hooks to shut down movement. A single clean takedown can neutralize someone faster than trading blows. Wrestlers also bring an often overlooked advantage: posture and base that make you hard to hit in scrambles. Their ability to use pressure while staying mobile lets them shield their head, call for help, or sprint away when the moment arrives. But the limits are real and obvious. Wrestling doesn't do striking, so a sloppy shot can leave your chin exposed to haymakers. On concrete, slams and takedowns carry injury risks to both parties. Multiple attackers change everything. Dropping one person to the ground can expose you to others. Weapons are another game changer. That's why the smartest wrestlers adapt their priorities. Use takedowns to create windows to escape, drive people into walls or cars rather than flat ground, and avoid prolonged ground fights when there's more than one threat. Conditioning and grit are part of the package too. Wrestlers love to be under pressure, and their ability to grind through fatigue make them hard to outlast when things get wild. That cardio buys precious time. In short, wrestling gives you options. It teaches you how to control chaos. Krav Maga. Krav Maga was built for one thing, which was to get out alive. It isn't a sport and it doesn't babysit technique. It's supposed to be brutal, practical, and focused on immediate escape. The drills teach instinctive responses. Strike the soft targets, control the weapon, break posture, and move. Eye gouges, throat strikes, groin attacks, and quick disarms are all part of the tool set, because the aim is to create a window to run, not to score points. What makes Krav Maga useful on the street is its mindset. It trains you to act under stress, use whatever works, and prioritize escape. You rehearse real scenarios like surprise attacks, knife threats, and multiple attackers. The strikes are simple and ugly. Importantly, Krav Maga forces confrontation to be short. The goal is to damage enough to move, not to show off technique. There are trade-offs. Krav Maga's strength is also its bluntness. It doesn't build the deep, repeatable habits of boxing, wrestling, or Jiu Jitsu. If you never spar or roll under pressure, your instinctive cuts may fall apart when adrenaline hits. Knife and gun defenses look good in a drill, but are risky when faced with a real armed attacker. Legality matters too, and eye pokes or throat strikes are effective, but can land you in serious legal trouble if used without clear, unavoidable threat. So, where Krav Maga shines is as a supplement and mindset. Use it to train immediate reactions, awareness, and rapid exits. Combine it with live striking practice from boxing, clinch control from wrestling or judo, and basic grappling escapes from jiu-jitsu. Drill realistic scenarios with progressive stress. Start slow, add movement, then add strikes, so your body learns to react, not freeze. In a street fight, Krav Maga gives you permission to be ugly when you need to be. Karate. Karate is one of the most recognizable martial arts in the world, but in real fights, its effectiveness depends entirely on how it's trained. Originally developed in Okinawa as a system for self-defense against armed attackers, traditional karate was built on sharp strikes, quick footwork, and precise timing. The old-school approach, what you might call dojo karate, which wasn't about point fighting or bouncing around in tournaments. It was about ending a threat with one clean, committed strike. A perfectly timed counter to the jaw, a low kick to the knee, or a straight punch to the body could end a fight instantly if delivered with control and intent. Where karate shines is in discipline and distance management. A well-trained karate practitioner understands how to control range better than almost anyone. They move in and out before the other person even knows what happened. The speed, posture, and explosive striking they develop are incredibly dangerous when combined with real-world awareness. Even modern versions that focus on point sparring still sharpen reactions and balance in ways that translate when things get unpredictable. But the limitations are real. Most karate schools don't pressure test techniques enough. If you've never sparred full contact or felt resistance, your strikes may not land the same way when adrenaline hits. The rigid stances, chambered punches, and pulling of strikes that work in a dojo don't hold up when someone grabs, rushes, or swings wildly. On concrete or in a close space, fancy kata doesn't help. You need adaptability, not form. That's why cross-training is key. Karate gives you the tools, but you have to learn how to apply them when the fight looks nothing like a drill. Still, a karateka who understands real violence, who spars, who knows timing, and who can blend karate's precision with modern practicality is a serious threat. One clean strike can stop a fight cold, and when combined with grappling awareness or clinch control, it turns into a complete self-defense foundation. The all-talk guy. Every street has one of the guys who swears he used to fight, who's got a story for every scar that never happened, and who thinks yelling loud is the same thing as being dangerous. He's the human version of an empty can, loud but hollow. The all-talk guy doesn't train, he doesn't prepare, and usually doesn't even realize how unprepared he really is. His only weapon is ego, and that's what gets him hurt. When things start getting heated, he relies on volume, not control. He'll puff his chest, get in someone's face, throw a few words, and expect the other person to back down. Sometimes that actually works because intimidation is real, but when it doesn't and someone calls his bluff, that's where reality hits. Fights don't care about confidence when there's no foundation behind it. The all-talk guy usually throws wide, looping punches, and they don't have any balance or defense. They also burn all their energy in the first 5 seconds, and once he realizes it's not like in his head, panic takes over. He'll grab, stumble, or swing wild, and that's when real fighters end it. The difference between training and pretending is control. The trained fighter knows when to hit, when to move, and when to stop. The talker just reacts. But there's something to be said about why this guy exists. Most people who talk big don't want to fight. They want to avoid it by convincing others they're dangerous. In a way, it's a survival instinct. Talking big might save you once, but it also attracts attention you can't handle. In the real world, confidence means nothing without composure. The all-talk guy mistakes noise for power and ends up learning the hard way that fights don't start with words, they end with who stays calm. It's a lesson everyone learns eventually, but the loud ones usually learn it on the pavement. Kung Fu. Kung Fu is one of the oldest and most respected martial arts in the world. It's rooted in Chinese history, discipline, and philosophy, but when you strip away the culture and ask one brutal question. Does it work when someone's trying to hurt you in the street? And the answer gets complicated. Traditional kung fu wasn't made for bar fights or parking lot chaos. It was built around forms, structure, and long-term development. The techniques you see are all impressive, but they rely on control and rhythm. Street fights don't have either. In real situations, kung fu's biggest problem is distance. Most styles train against other kung fu practitioners, not aggressive, untrained brawlers charging with haymakers. The long stances and extended strikes look great in demonstrations, but collapse fast on uneven ground or when someone grabs and clinches. The transitions between movements often take too long to apply before someone's already inside your space. That said, there are things kung fu gives you that can help. It builds coordination, awareness, balance, and confidence in movement, which all are things that matter in a real altercation. If you've trained long enough, you'll have sharper reflexes and a sense of timing that can absolutely make a difference. But without contact sparring, realistic drills, or exposure to pressure, that skill doesn't always transfer when it matters most. Some modern schools have adapted, blending traditional kung fu with kickboxing or even Jiu Jitsu to make it practical again. Those versions can absolutely hold their own, but pure traditional kung fu often struggles once things get unpredictable. Wing Chun. Wing Chun was built for close-range fighting, the kind of fighting where you don't have time to think, only react. It's fast, efficient, and all about economy of motion. The system was designed around simplicity, block, counter, and control the center line before your opponent even realizes what happened. On paper, it's perfect for self-defense, but in practice, it's not that simple. The core of Wing Chun lies in sensitivity. That's where drills like Chi Sao or sticky hands come in. You learn to feel pressure, redirect energy, and strike at the same time. It's brilliant in concept, but the problem is most fights don't stay in that neat, controlled range. They start with distance, explode with chaos, and often turn into clinches, takedowns, or wild scrambles. When it works, Wing Chun looks sharp. The chain punches, elbows, and trapping hands can overwhelm someone who doesn't know what's happening. But when it fails hard. The stance is too square, the hands are too low. And against someone who's aggressive, bigger, or just reckless, Wing Chun's structure can collapse. It's not built to handle slams, low kicks, or ground fights, which all can happen constantly in real altercations. That said, Wing Chun does teach something valuable: timing and composure under pressure. The style's emphasis on staying relaxed while defending and countering fast can help in those first few chaotic seconds of a confrontation. Practitioners also tend to develop sharp reflexes and a habit of staying close, which can help control someone who's grabbing or pushing. But if we're being brutally honest, Wing Chun's biggest weakness isn't its techniques, it's how most people train them. Without full contact sparring, without testing it against resistance, the art becomes theory, and theory doesn't survive impact. Wing Chun is a piece of martial arts history, and when blended with modern fighting knowledge, it can be effective. But alone, in a raw, unpredictable street fight, it's not built for that kind of storm. Aikido. Aikido looks almost peaceful when you watch it in a dojo. It's all about flow, redirection, and using your opponent's force against them. The goal isn't to hurt, but to neutralize. On paper, it sounds like the perfect self-defense system. In reality, it's one of the least reliable when things get ugly. The philosophy behind Aikido is beautiful, though. They stay calm, balanced, and use technique, not strength. But that mindset was built for cooperative training, not real chaos. In a real fight, nobody's throwing clean, committed punches for you to blend with. They're swinging wild, tackling, shoving, and grabbing clothes. The precise timing Aikido needs rarely shows up in those moments. Aikido throws and wrist locks work perfect when your partner moves exactly how they're supposed to. But the street doesn't cooperate. You don't get clean grips, and most people don't react to pain the way drills expect them to. Adrenaline and chaos break technique fast. The lack of live sparring in most Aikido schools makes that gap even bigger. That said, Aikido does teach some genuinely useful habits. It also teaches how to fall safely, which can prevent serious injury if you get knocked down or thrown. And if you've trained seriously under a school that mixes in real resistance or modern adaptations, you'll at least have composure when things get rough. But pure Aikido against a trained fighter or even an aggressive brawler, it simply doesn't hold up. It's too slow to set up, too technical to apply, and not built for real impact. The art's spirit of control and non-violence is admirable, but in survival, hesitation and complexity are dangerous. Aikido shines as philosophy. It builds character, patience, and discipline. But if we're ranking arts for survival, it's near the bottom. When someone's actually trying to hurt you, redirecting energy is only step one. You still need to strike, control, or escape. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the best thing you can know when a fight hits the ground, and the worst thing if you stay there too long. It's designed for one-on-one control, not chaos. The entire art is built around leverage, patience, and finishing from bad positions. If someone grabs you, tackles you, or drags you down, a trained grappler knows how to stay calm, protect their head, and take over. The truth is, most people don't know what to do once they're on the floor. That's where Jiu-Jitsu shines. Chokes end fights fast without needing power, and joint locks end them permanently. You can hold, escape, or finish depending on the situation. A smaller smaller person can control or submit someone twice their size, and that's rare in any martial art. But the street isn't a gym. Concrete, broken glass, and other people change everything. Staying on your back when there are multiple attackers or weapons nearby is a recipe for disaster. You can't shrimp away from a knife or double-leg your way out of a crowd. Smart jiu-jitsu for survival means adapting. Clinch to control. Use trips instead of guard pulls and learn to get back up fast. Your goal isn't to win a jiu-jitsu match. It's to end the danger and leave. Jiu-jitsu is amazing when things go bad up close. It's calm under chaos, but it's not a complete street system unless you add stand-up awareness, quick disengagement drills, and the mindset to escape rather than dominate. Grappling gives you control, but survival is about getting home, not getting a tap. Wrestling. If jiu-jitsu teaches you how to survive on the ground, wrestling teaches you how to decide if the fight ever gets there. It's the art of control, not through theory or technique names, but through pure pressure, timing, and body awareness. Wrestlers know how to close distance, take someone down, and stay on top until they say otherwise. That alone makes it one of the most useful real-world styles you can have. The average street fight starts with a shove or a wild swing. A wrestler doesn't freeze, they change levels, wrap the hips, and slam the momentum straight into the dirt. Their base, grip strength, and balance are unmatched. Even without strikes, that ability to decide where the fight happens instantly puts them in charge. If a fight goes bad, they can plant someone, hold them down, and disengage before it escalates. But like every sport, wrestling has blind spots. There are no punches, no kicks, and no submissions. If a wrestler shoots into a knee, they're out cold and on concrete. Big takedowns can injure both people. And when there's more than one attacker, holding someone down can get you trapped. The key is adaptation. Use wrestling to control and move, not to prove a point. A good sprawl, a strong clinch, and the ability to get back up fast are what make wrestling work outside the mat. The cardio, toughness, and explosiveness built through wrestling carry over better than almost any other style. It's not fancy, but it's brutally efficient. In a real fight, the wrestler doesn't need a highlight move, they just need one clean takedown to decide what happens next. Muay Thai. Muay Thai is pure impact and the art of 8 limbs. When used right, it's one of the most brutal and effective striking systems ever created. Muay Thai fighters are built for chaos. They train to throw, block, and absorb punishment in real time, not in theory. In a one-on-one street fight, that toughness alone can end things before they start. What makes Muay Thai so effective for survival is simplicity. There's no fluff, no long sequences, just raw, direct violence that works under pressure. A low kick to the thigh can stop someone from chasing you. A knee in the clinch can fold a bodybuilder, and elbows, they end fights instantly. The art teaches how to break posture, attack balance, and use close range like a weapon. But here's the catch, nobody is actually training Muay Thai to fight in the street. It's a sport, and sport habits don't always fit the chaos outside. In the ring, you're fighting one person, barefoot, on soft mats, with rules. In the real world, it's shoes, pavement, and surprise angles. If someone grabs you, clinch work and balance save you. But if someone tackles you to the ground, or if 2 people jump in, Muay Thai has limits. That said, its fundamentals translate beautifully. The conditioning, awareness, and control of distance all matter when adrenaline spikes. If a trained Muay Thai fighter ends up in a street fight, their timing, power, and composure will make them dangerous. Boxing. Boxing is the king of simplicity with 2 fists and 1 mission. Hit and don't get hit. It's a sport that turns chaos into rhythm, and in a real fight, that control over timing and distance is everything. A trained boxer doesn't panic when someone charges. They see the swing before it comes, slip the shot, and land one clean punch that changes the whole situation. Most street fights start and end standing. That's where boxing shines. The stance gives you balance, the guard protects your chin, and the footwork keeps you mobile. A sharp jab blinds and stops momentum. A short hook to the jaw can shut someone off instantly. Boxers are used to moving under fire with punches flying, adrenaline pumping, no time to think, and that's what makes them naturally calm in pressure. The best part about boxing in survival terms is efficiency. You don't need to hurt someone badly to stop them. A body shot, a stiff jab, or just clean defense can end things before they escalate. And because boxing trains conditioning, timing, and reaction speed constantly, you're less likely to gas out when things get messy. But boxing has gaps. It doesn't deal with grabs, takedowns, or when the fight is on the ground. If someone gets inside the clinch or tackles you, pure boxing isn't enough. And on concrete, one slip can end your night fast. Still, when it comes to short, one-on-one confrontations, the kind that happen in bars, parking lots, or crowds boxing, might be the most practical striking base there is. It's fast, direct, and built for chaos. One mistake against a trained boxer and the fight's already over. MMA, mixed martial arts, is the ultimate hybrid and the closest thing we have to a complete combat system in modern times. It's not theory, it's pressure-tested reality. MMA fighters are trained to strike, clinch, wrestle, and grapple under stress, in gloves, in chaos, and against resistance. That balance of skills makes them the most adaptable fighters in the world, and in a survival situation, Adaptability is everything. The reason mixed martial arts works so well is that it has no blind spots. You can't surprise an MMA fighter by changing range, and they know how to fight on the feet, in the clinch, and on the ground. They can punch, kick, elbow, knee, slam, or choke, depending on what the situation demands. It's not about memorizing moves, it's about reacting correctly in real time. And because their training happens against live resistance, they know how to stay calm when things go wrong. If a fight breaks out, mixed martial arts gives you options. If someone throws a punch, they slip and counter. If someone grabs them, they clinch and trip. And if someone tackles them, they defend, reverse, and stand up. The only real downside is that MMA fighters are used to rules. No weapons, no concrete, no friends jumping in. On the street, everything's unpredictable. Kicking a grounded opponent or going for an arm bar on asphalt can end badly for everyone. But the physical control and mental calmness MMA builds still apply anywhere. In a one-on-one scenario, there's nothing more effective. Mixed martial arts teaches not just how to fight, but how to win under pressure. It's the perfect mix of chaos and composure. The self-taught fighter. The self-taught fighter is the final evolution of survival instinct. They learn from life itself. Maybe they've worked security. Maybe they've been jumped before. Maybe they just grew up in an environment where talking wasn't always enough, or maybe they have been doing a mix of a lot of martial arts for years. Every lesson they've learned came with bruises attached. There's no coach to correct mistakes in life, only experience. That's what makes them unpredictable because they don't fight by any rulebook. What separates the real self-taught fighter from the reckless brawler is awareness. The good ones understand that real violence isn't cinematic. It's fast, ugly, and often ends in seconds. They don't square up with fancy stances or wait for a referee. They keep their hands low, eyes wide, scanning for openings, exits, or bystanders who might jump in. They're always reading the room before reading the opponent. That kind of instinct doesn't come from drills. It comes from pressure and pain. Self-taught fighters also know how real bodies react. They've seen people freeze, panic, or swing wildly. That experience shapes their timing. They know when to move, when to talk, and when to strike. They rely on simplicity, not technical perfection, but it works under stress because it's built from repetition in real chaos. But what truly makes a street-adapted fighter dangerous and wise isn't aggression, it's restraint. They've been through enough to know what fighting costs: broken bones, jail time, legal trouble, and guilt. So now when things escalate, they don't feed it. They de-escalate. They use their presence, voice, and calm to control situations before fists ever fly. They know that walking away isn't weakness, it's mastery. When violence can't be avoided, their moves are short, efficient, and final. A fast palm strike, a shove, or a sweep, and then they're gone. They don't win the fight, they end it. That's the mindset most trained martial artists eventually discover. Your goal isn't domination, it's safety. The self-taught fighter embodies that truth naturally. They don't chase clout, they don't talk tough, and they don't overestimate themselves. They've seen what happens when pride takes control, and they'd rather stay out of it. Their biggest weapon isn't their hands, it's their judgment. So in a way, this isn't just the #1 fighting style, it's the one everyone should learn from. Because no matter what you train, real life doesn't follow your rules. The ground is hard, people don't fight fair, and words can save you from situations your punches can't. At the end of the day, survival isn't about who's strongest, it's about who's smartest. Knowing when to act, when to talk, and when to walk away. Every martial art gives you tools, but the mindset of the self-taught fighter is what really keeps them alive. Which country has the best martial art? Japan. Japan doesn't have one best martial art. It has multiple martial arts that dominate different categories, which is arguably more impressive. Karate, Judo, and Sumo all emerged from Japan, and all became globally dominant in their respective domains. This isn't coincidence, it's the result of a cultural approach to martial arts that prioritizes systematic development, rigorous testing, and constant refinement through competition. Karate became an Olympic sport and is practiced by millions worldwide. The art produces fighters with exceptional technical precision and speed. Judo is an Olympic sport that dominates international grappling competition. Judokas consistently win at the highest levels of combat sports because Judo's systematic approach to teaching and testing creates skilled grapplers. Sumo, while niche, represents one of the most physically demanding martial arts ever developed. A sumo wrestler's strength and technique are unmatched in their sport. The reason Japan produced multiple dominant martial arts is that Japanese culture values kaizen, continuous improvement. Each art was refined over decades through competition and systematic analysis of what works. Karate competitions drove the development of striking technique. Judo competitions drove grappling excellence. Both arts invested in testing techniques against resisting opponents at high intensity, which accelerated improvement and exposed flaws faster than traditional training could. What makes Japan's approach particularly effective is that they didn't cling to ancient traditions for tradition's sake. They took their martial heritage, tested it against modern resistance, and evolved it. Karate went from purely traditional forms to dynamic sparring. Judo went from dangerous throws to refined technique with safety standards. This willingness to evolve while maintaining core principles is why Japanese martial arts remain globally competitive. If you've ever noticed that Japanese martial artists always seem technically precise even when they're losing, that's the Kaizen effect. They've been trained to identify and fix technical flaws constantly. Next time you watch judo or karate competition, notice how the best athletes are constantly adjusting their technique mid-match. That adaptation comes from a culture that values refinement above all else. Thailand. Muay Thai is arguably the most complete striking art in the world. It's not the hardest hitting or the flashiest, but it's the most comprehensive system for standing combat. Thailand developed Muay Thai through centuries of warfare, then refined it through competitive fighting. The art includes punches, kicks, elbows, knees, and clinch work. Every range is covered. Every striking tool is developed. What separates Muay Thai from other striking arts is that it's pressure-tested constantly. Thai fighters compete regularly at high intensity. Techniques that don't work get exposed immediately. Fighters who can't execute the technique correctly get beaten by opponents who can. This constant pressure testing means Muay Thai evolves rapidly. A technique that's effective one year might become obsolete the next if fighters develop better defenses against it. The clinch work in Muay Thai is particularly devastating. Thai fighters spend thousands of hours developing clinch control, hip positioning, and knee placement. A Thai fighter in the clinch against a striker without clinch knowledge is like a grappler on top of someone without grappling knowledge. The difference in ability is so vast that the outcome is predetermined. This is why MMA fighters who want to compete at the highest level train Muay Thai clinch work. Thailand's approach to martial arts is different from Japan's systematization. Thailand developed Muay Thai through warfare and refined it through fighting culture. There was no formal organization deciding what techniques to teach. Instead, fighters discovered what worked, perfected it, and passed it on. This organic evolution created an art that's intensely practical because it had to be. Ineffective techniques didn't survive. They were abandoned because fighters who used them lost. The visceral reality of Muay Thai is that it's brutal. Fighters take real damage. Brains get rattled, bones get broken. This brutality is why Muay Thai is so effective. There's no room for techniques that only work against cooperative partners. Everything must work against opponents who are trying to hurt you. Next time you watch Muay Thai, notice how the clinch exchanges look like controlled violence. That control comes from thousands of hours of practice against real resistance. The Thai fighter knows exactly how much force to apply and where to apply it because they've done it thousands of times. Brazil. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu emerged from Japan when Judo was brought to Brazil. Brazilian fighters took Judo's grappling principles, removed the restrictions on leg attacks, and developed a complete submission grappling system. The art evolved in Brazilian culture through veiled Judo fighting, where almost anything was allowed. This pressure testing and unrestricted fighting created an art that's devastatingly effective. What makes Brazilian Jiu Jitsu special is the guard system. The guard being on your back with your legs controlling an opponent is an offensive position in BJJ. This completely changes the dynamic of grappling. Most grappling arts treat being on your back as a defensive position. You're trying to escape. In BJJ, your back is an offensive launching point. You can attack submissions, you can sweep your opponent to top position, you can control the entire exchange from your back. This innovation in position hierarchy created a complete grappling art that works at all skill levels. A smaller person can submit a larger person through superior positioning and technique. This fundamental principle makes BJJ accessible to people of all sizes, which is why it's become so popular. A 140-pound person can submit a 240-pound person if they understand position and technique better. Brazil's approach to martial arts development was different from both Japan and Thailand. Brazil didn't inherit a martial art and refine it through competition the way Japan did. Brazil created a new art by taking borrowed principles and adding innovations through unrestricted fighting. Veiled Judo fighting removed the safety rules and forced evolution. Techniques that didn't work against unlimited resistance disappeared. Techniques that worked became fundamental. The practical result is that Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is the most complete grappling art in the world. Every submission, every escape, every positional transition has been tested thousands of times against resisting opponents. If you've ever felt overwhelmed watching someone escape an armbar they had no business escaping from, that's what comes from years of escape training against active resistance. Next time you watch grappling, notice how the best grapplers are constantly moving their hips to create space and maintain control. That hip mobility comes from thousands of hours of specific training for that movement pattern. China. Kung Fu is complicated. China has hundreds of distinct martial arts, each with different philosophies, techniques, and history. Shaolin Kung Fu, Wing Chun, Tai Chi, Sanda, and many others all originated from China. Some are effective. Some are primarily philosophical or meditative. Some are forms of exercise. The challenge with discussing China's martial arts is determining which one to evaluate. If we're talking about pure martial effectiveness, Sanda is China's answer to competitive striking. Sanda includes punches, kicks, and throws. It's pressure tested through competition. Chinese fighters have proven competitive at international levels. Sanda fighters can compete with boxers and kickboxers because Sanda forces the same pressure testing that boxing and kickboxing do. Traditional Kung Fu is different. Most traditional Kung Fu is not pressure tested against full resistance. Students practice forms. They practice techniques against compliant partners. They develop philosophical understanding. But they don't regularly spar against opponents who are trying to beat them. This lack of pressure testing means traditional Kung Fu effectiveness is largely theoretical. Some traditional Kung Fu is effective. Some is purely artistic and philosophical with no combat application. China's contribution to martial arts is complex because it's so diverse. China has influenced nearly every martial art in Asia. Karate has roots in Chinese martial arts. Judo has influences from Chinese wrestling. Thai boxing has some historical connections to Chinese fighting tradition. But in terms of a single dominant martial art that proves China's superiority, the answer isn't clear. Sanda is effective, but it's relatively new as a sport. Traditional Kung Fu is ancient but largely untested in modern contexts. The philosophical question China raises is whether martial arts should be judged by combat effectiveness or by cultural and spiritual value. If the measure is combat effectiveness, Sanda competes but doesn't dominate. If the measure is philosophical depth and historical significance, Kung Fu is unmatched. Next time you see Kung Fu demonstrations, notice the aesthetic beauty of the forms. That beauty is intentional. It's the art being evaluated on criteria other than combat effectiveness, which suggests that Kung Fu prioritizes other values beyond winning fights. South Korea. Taekwondo is South Korea's contribution to martial arts, and it's become one of the most practiced martial arts in the world. Millions of people train Taekwondo. It's an Olympic sport. It's taught to children globally as a gateway martial art. The question is whether this widespread adoption means Taekwondo is the best martial art, or whether it's simply the most successfully marketed. Taekwondo's strength is its kicking technique. Taekwondo practitioners develop leg speed and kicking power that's unmatched in other kicking arts. A Taekwondo fighter's kicks are faster and more technical than fighters from other arts who haven't dedicated specific time to kicking. This technical superiority in kicking is real and documented through competition. The limitation of Taekwondo is the same as karate and many other traditional arts. Olympic Taekwondo emphasizes speed and technical precision in a controlled format. Competition rules reward light contact and clean technique. This creates fighters who are technically excellent at kicking, but haven't developed the power or adaptability needed for unrestricted combat. A Taekwondo competitor who transitions to full contact fighting discovers their kicks need more power and their hand techniques need development. South Korea's cultural emphasis on martial arts education created the conditions for Taekwondo to become globally dominant. The country invested heavily in martial arts infrastructure, training, and promotion. This cultural prioritization created a system that produces technically excellent kickers. But technical excellence in a specific limited domain doesn't necessarily mean martial superiority overall. The practical result is that Taekwondo is excellent for teaching discipline, developing kicking technique, and creating athletic young people. It's less effective for unrestricted fighting. Next time you watch Taekwondo competition, notice how everything is scored based on clean technique and controlled power. That scoring system creates a specific kind of fighter who excels in that system, but might struggle in unrestricted competition where power and aggression matter differently. Russia. Sambo emerged from Soviet Union military hand-to-hand combat development. The Soviet Union invested in creating an efficient, effective martial system that combined striking, throwing, and submissions. Sambo was designed for pragmatic fighting, not sport competition or philosophical development. The result is a martial art that's devastatingly practical and effective. What makes Sambo special is its systematic approach. Sambo wasn't developed organically over centuries. It was designed intentionally by military experts to be maximally effective for combat. Every technique has a purpose. Every movement is efficient. There's no unnecessary complexity. This systematic design created an art that's extremely efficient at what it does. Sambo's leg lock systems are particularly advanced. Russian wrestlers developed leg lock techniques that are considered among the best in the world. A Sambo fighter with elite leg lock knowledge can submit almost any grappler who doesn't have equivalent leg lock training. This technical superiority in a specific range is so significant that it's influenced other grappling arts. Modern grappling worldwide has adopted many Sambo leg lock principles. Russia's approach to martial arts was military efficiency. The question wasn't what's beautiful or what has philosophical depth. The question was what works for combat. This military origin created an art that's intensely practical. Sambo has proved competitive in MMA, submission grappling, and wrestling exchanges because it was designed for real fighting, not for sport with restriction. The practical difference between Sambo and traditional arts is that Sambo was born from unrestricted fighting. Every technique had to work against active resistance or it was discarded. This constant pressure testing through military application created an art that's proof-tested in ways most traditional arts aren't. Next time you see a Sambo fighter transition to MMA, notice how smoothly they adapt to striking. That adaptation comes from training in a system designed for multiple ranges, not specialization in one range. Cuba produced the world's best amateur boxers through systematic development of boxing technique. The Cuban boxing team dominates Olympic boxing competitions. They've won more gold medals than any other nation in recent Olympics. This isn't because Cubans are naturally better boxers. It's because Cuba's training system is superior. The Cuban approach to boxing emphasizes footwork and technical development above all else. Young Cuban boxers drill footwork obsessively before they ever spar hard. By the time they're competing, their footwork is automatic, their positioning is natural, and their technique is refined. This emphasis on foundational technique creates boxers with exceptional fundamentals. When two boxers of equal athleticism compete, the one with superior footwork usually wins. Cuban boxing culture also emphasizes light technical sparring rather than hard sparring. Fighters drill combinations and positioning at speed without maximum power. This approach prevents unnecessary brain damage while allowing technique development at high intensity. The result is that Cuban boxers develop excellent technique without the cognitive decline that comes from years of hard sparring. Cuba's isolation from international boxing during certain periods forced the development of an internal system focused on excellence through technique rather than external validation. This forced focus created a boxing culture that valued precision above all else. When Cuban boxers competed internationally against boxers from other systems, the technical superiority was obvious. Cuban boxers won not because they were tougher or more aggressive, but because their technique was better. The cultural lesson from Cuba is that systematic focus on fundamentals produces excellence. Flashy techniques and hard sparring are visible and feel impressive, but they don't produce the best fighters. Next time you watch boxing, if you see a fighter with seemingly impossible footwork positioning that makes their opponent miss by inches, they might be trained in the Cuban system. That positioning comes from thousands of hours drilling footwork patterns until they're automatic. USA. The United States developed wrestling into a sport that's intensely competitive and produces wrestlers who dominate international grappling. American wrestling, both freestyle and folk style, has created a system where wrestlers are pressure tested constantly through competition. American high schools have wrestling programs. American colleges have wrestling programs. Wrestlers compete from childhood through professional levels. American wrestling's strength is takedown dominance and top control. American wrestlers understand leverage, positioning, and pressure in ways that create overwhelming advantage. The best American wrestlers can take down almost any opponent who doesn't have equivalent wrestling knowledge. This specialization in takedowns and top control is so effective that wrestling became a foundation for MMA success. The limitation of American wrestling is the same limitation all wrestling systems face. Wrestling has no submission defense. Wrestlers can control and damage through positioning, but they can't defend leg locks or arm locks. American wrestlers who transition to submission grappling have to learn those defenses, which means wrestling alone is incomplete as a grappling system. American wrestling culture emphasizes competition and constant testing. Wrestlers compete through high school and college at very high intensity. This competition creates wrestlers who are pressure tested constantly. The best American wrestlers have competed hundreds of times by the time they are in college. This constant competition accelerates skill development and exposes weaknesses that need fixing. The American contribution to martial arts is competitive wrestling excellence. The USA doesn't have a traditional martial art like Japan's karate or Thailand's Muay Thai. Instead, America developed wrestling into a sport system that produces world-class competitors. This system-based approach creates wrestlers who can compete internationally and dominate. Next time you watch wrestling or MMA, notice how American wrestlers consistently close distance and establish control. That consistency comes from thousands of hours competing in wrestling matches where those skills matter. The martial art that's best depends on what you're measuring. Every martial art ranked by how dangerous it makes you. Aikido. Aikido was built on a philosophy of harmony and redirection. You learn to blend with an attacker's energy, to neutralize them without causing harm, to use circular movements and joint locks against cooperative partners who attack you in ways that make sense for the technique you're practicing. Wrist grabs, straight punches, choreographed throws. No one's resisting hard. No one's moving unpredictably. The entire system depends on your partner helping you execute. So you train for years. Your movements become precise. Your understanding of leverage deepens, your confidence grows because you're executing techniques perfectly every single time. You start to believe that this precision translates to reality, that the real world operates on the same principles as your dojo. You walk around genuinely believing you're prepared for violence because you've become skilled at executing techniques against people who want you to succeed. Then someone actually attacks you. Not a wrist grab, not a straight punch. They close distance aggressively. They move in ways your forms never prepared you for. They don't follow the script. Your precision means nothing. Your leverage doesn't work the way it did in the dojo. Your movements that were so beautiful and technical suddenly feel slow and ineffective. That shock breaks down your ego instantly. You realize that years of training prepared you for absolutely nothing that matters. Aikido doesn't make you dangerous. It makes you confidently unprepared. And that false confidence is what puts you in the worst position of all because you'll walk into situations thinking you're ready when you're completely lost. You've spent thousands of hours perfecting a system that only works if your opponent cooperates, and the real world never cooperates. The person who trained Aikido for 5 years is in a worse position than the person who trained nothing because they'll walk into danger thinking they're ready. But the next one looks similar on the surface. That's what makes it worse. Hapkido. Hapkido is Korean. It mixes striking with joint locks and throws. It promises completeness. You train kicks, you practice punches, you learn takedowns and submissions. On paper, it looks like it covers more ground than Aikido. The curriculum is broader. The philosophy is more aggressive. You're not just redirecting, you're actually attacking back. So you feel different training it. You feel like a fighter. You feel like you're preparing for real combat instead of philosophical neutralization. The problem is execution. Most Hapkido schools teach theory without testing it under real conditions. You drill combinations with compliant partners who already know what's coming. You practice disarms against people holding weapons the way the textbook says they should hold them, not the way someone actually would if they were trying to hurt you. You spar lightly with people you've trained with for years who know exactly how you move and are cooperating with your success. The gap between theory and pressure is enormous. Your kicks might be decent technically, your joint locks might be mechanically sound on paper, but you've never thrown a combination at someone who's throwing one back simultaneously. You've never felt actual pressure during a scramble where both people are resisting. You've never had your timing tested by someone faster than you or stronger than you, or moving in unpredictable patterns. So you develop this confidence that's based entirely on clean execution in controlled conditions, and that confidence follows you into the real world where nothing is controlled. You think you're better prepared than the Aikido person because you trained kicks and punches. You're not. You're just confident for slightly different reasons, and that makes you equally unprepared. The only difference is that now you're overconfident about a slightly wider range of useless techniques. You can do a spinning kick perfectly in the gym. You have no idea what happens when someone is moving forward and hitting you while you're setting it up. Hapkido makes you dangerous by promising what Aikido didn't. It promises completeness. It delivers the same thing though, false confidence through untested technique. You're in a worse position than the pure Aikido person because you believe your training is more comprehensive, so you're even more confident walking into situations. That will expose you. The next one actually has pressure testing. That's where things get interesting. Sport Judo. Sport Judo is pressure tested. You throw people on their heads, people throw you on yours. You learn to control opponents, to escape bad positions, to feel what genuine grappling resistance feels like. Your throws are legitimate. Your break falls are solid. When you're in a grappling exchange with another judoka, you're dangerous. You can take someone down who doesn't know how to fight that exchange. That part is real. You've been tested. But here's what sport judo creates that's insidious. You become excellent at one thing, and that excellence creates overconfidence about everything else. You step into striking range with someone who's trained to hit you, and suddenly none of your throws matter because you can't get close without eating punches. You've never moved footwork while someone's throwing combinations at your head. You've never felt how different distance management is when strikes are involved. The distance you're comfortable moving through in a judoka uniform on mats becomes a minefield when someone is punching you. So you do what you've trained, you try to close distance aggressively, you lower your level to shoot or clinch, and you get hit repeatedly because you're moving in ways that only make sense if your opponent is cooperating with your takedown attempt. Sport judo makes you dangerous by making you genuinely skilled at something real, then creating overconfidence that extends far beyond your actual capabilities. You think you understand violence because you've been tested in grappling. You haven't. You understand grappling. You understand nothing about distance with strikes involved. The moment the range changes, everything you've trained becomes a liability because you've never had to defend it while someone is punching you in the face. That confidence in grappling blinds you to how badly you're getting hurt standing up. The next one has an even more complete delusion because they trained striking instead of grappling. Kickboxing. Kickboxing taught you something real. You trained against resisting opponents. You got hit, you learned to throw combinations combinations that work because they were tested repeatedly against people moving and countering. You learn to move footwork that functions because footwork failures result in getting kicked or punched. You understand angles because angles are tested every single session. When you're in the ring with another kickboxer, you know what you're doing. Your kicks are legitimate weapon. Your hand combinations are crisp. Your timing is sharp because it's been tested hundreds of times under pressure. You can hurt people. That part is genuine. But kickboxing also created a blind spot so complete that it becomes dangerous. You train to keep the fight at a specific range where your kicks and punches work. You never trained what happens when someone closes the distance and clinches you aggressively. You never felt the weight of someone controlling you horizontally on the ground. You spent years perfecting distance control, and that perfection convinced you that you'll always be able to maintain distance. Your footwork is good enough to keep people away. Your timing is sharp enough to punish them if they get close. So you become overconfident in your ability to prevent what you've never trained. The moment a wrestler shoots on you or someone pulls guard, you're in a place you've never been, against someone who's trained extensively in that space. Your beautiful kicks don't matter when you're on your back. Your hand combinations don't matter when you're being held in side control. You panic because nothing works anymore. Your tools don't function in this environment. Kickboxing makes you dangerous by making you extremely good at one dimension and then creating overconfidence that you can avoid the others. You've never sprawled against a takedown. You've never felt pressure from top position. You've never had to escape a submission or create space while being held down. But the next one is about to realize something crucial that separates them from everyone before. The MMA Hobbyist. You trained a bit of boxing, you took some BJJ classes, you did wrestling in high school, you rolled, you sparred, you did it all casually. So you know about everything, you're well-rounded, you understand the game because you've touched every part of it. You can talk about submissions, footwork, takedown. You've been there, you've done that. You know how it all works. At least that's what you tell yourself when you're watching fights or talking to people at bars. Except you haven't. You're mediocre at everything. Your boxing doesn't have the footwork of someone who trained it seriously for years. Your footwork is sloppy, your entries are slow, your combinations lack the snap that comes from thousands of repetitions. Your BJJ doesn't have the positional precision of someone who made it a focus. You know the names of positions, but you don't know the details, the micro adjustments, the timing that keeps you safe. Your wrestling is years out of practice. High school wrestling was 15 years ago. You can talk about technique, but your body doesn't remember the drilling. The muscle memory is long gone. That casual exposure created just enough knowledge to be dangerous, but not enough skill to actually execute anything under real pressure. You know the game. You can't play it. So you get invited to a local gym and you show up thinking you're going to roll, maybe do some striking. You step in the cage with someone who specializes in one thing and you get exposed immediately. The boxer beats you standing because your boxing is shallow and incomplete. You throw a decent combination and then you've got nothing left. No follow-up, no rhythm, no sense of how to flow between distances. The judoka beats you on the ground because your grappling is years out of date. You try to defend something you remember learning, but your timing is off and your frames are weak and they take your back in seconds. They know they're incomplete, but you're going in thinking you're complete. The hobbyist gets humbled constantly. They know they're incomplete, but they also know enough about fighting to walk into situations thinking they might have a chance. That false hope gets them hurt. They've trained enough to be confident, not enough to be competent. The worst position is knowing you're bad, but thinking you might be good enough anyway. You're not good at anything, but you know enough to think you might survive. And that's exactly when you get destroyed. Traditional boxing. Boxing is pressure tested, real pressure. You get hit. You learn to move. You understand angles because angles are tested against resisting opponents every single time you step into the ring. Your jab works because it's been tested hundreds of times. Your footwork functions because footwork failures result in getting hit cleanly. You're dangerous at distance. That's not theory. That's lived experience. When you step into a boxing gym, you step into a system where everything works or it doesn't work immediately. You can't hide behind philosophy or tradition or the idea that your technique is so subtle that ordinary people just don't understand it. You throw a punch, it either lands or it doesn't. You move, you either get hit or you don't. There's immediate feedback. You spar with people who are actively trying to hit you, and either you can defend or you can't. So your boxing is built on a foundation of actual testing under real pressure. You know what works because it works when someone is resisting, but you know you're incomplete. You've never kicked. You've never grappled. You're honest about that gap. That honesty saves you because you don't walk into situations expecting to handle everything. You know where you're vulnerable. You respect what you don't know. The boxer who gets taken down isn't shocked because they understand that grappling is outside their wheelhouse. They trained specifically to not grapple, to stay at distance where their hands work. So they're not delusional about their abilities. They're not walking into fights thinking they can handle submissions or ground control because they never claimed they could. That knowledge, that respect for what you haven't trained, keeps you from walking into the worst situation. You have skill in one area and humility about the others. The boxer understands the hierarchy of violence more clearly than almost anyone because they've felt what real pressure does to technique. They respect it. Wrestling. Wrestlers understand pressure. They test constantly in competition against resisting opponents who are actively trying to stop them from succeeding. Takedowns work because they've been tested against people fighting back desperately to prevent them. Top control is real because maintaining it against resistance is the entire point of wrestling. You know what works because it works when someone is resisting with everything they have. In competition, there's no hiding. There's no soft sparring. There's no, let me just drill this technique. There's just two people trying to control each other and one person wins because they executed better. A wrestler's confidence is built on a foundation of actual victory through tested technique. They've shot 1,000 takedowns, and most of them have worked because the mechanics are sound. They've felt what pressure does to bad positioning. They've learned to feel shifts in weight and balance because that's the feedback loop of wrestling. When you're on your back or pinned or in a bad position, you know immediately because the sport gives you instant feedback about failure. But they know. They've never trained striking. They've never felt getting punched while setting up a shot. They've never had to maintain distance while someone is throwing combinations. That knowledge keeps them humble. The wrestler who gets knocked out while shooting isn't shocked because they understood they had a gap. They trained specifically to close distance without strikes involved, so they're not arrogant about their abilities. They know exactly where the knife's edge is, exactly where their skill ends, and their vulnerability begins. A wrestler who gets into MMA knows what they're good at and knows what they're not good at because they trained against resisting opponents. There's no mystery. There's no illusion. Just honest assessment of capability. That understanding of their own limitations makes them more dangerous than the kickboxer or the judoka because they're honest about what they are and they respect what they're not. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. BJJ is pressure tested constantly. Your submissions work because they're tested against resisting opponents. Your positions matter because they're tested against people actively trying to escape and counter. You understand control because control is tested every single roll. When you roll, people aren't helping you succeed. They're helping you fail. They're trying to escape your guard. They're trying to pass your guard. They're trying to submit you before you submit them. Every single roll is a battle, so your understanding of what works is based on genuine pressure. You can't fake positioning in BJJ. You can't talk your way through a technique. Either you control your opponent or you don't. Either your submission is tight enough to finish or it's not. There's no gray area, no philosophical interpretation, just success or failure. That creates a foundation of genuine skill. When a BJJ person tells you their guard works, they mean it works against people trying to pass it. They mean it works under real resistance. But you know, grappling doesn't include striking. You've never trained to keep the fight standing. You respect that gap completely. The BJJ person who gets knocked out closing distance isn't delusional because they knew they had no striking defense. They understand that moving forward without striking knowledge against a striker is dangerous. That knowledge kept them honest. They didn't walk in thinking they were complete. They walked in knowing they needed to either stay on the ground or accept the striking disadvantage. A high-level BJJ person has trained against resisting opponents thousands of times. They know what works and what doesn't because they've felt it. They know their limitations because they've tested them. That combination of genuine skill and honest assessment of weakness makes them fundamentally more dangerous than anyone who's only trained one aspect of fighting. Muay Thai. Muay Thai is tested constantly. Elbows that cut, knees that break, kicks that can end fights, clinch work that controls opponents in the pocket where striking becomes devastating. You train against resisting opponents. People are trying to hurt you. You're trying to hurt them. The feedback is immediate and brutal. A kick that doesn't have proper form gets caught and checked. A clinch that isn't tight gets escaped. A knee that isn't timed right gets blocked. There's no hiding, no softness, no cooperative training. So Muay Thai creates strikers who understand real pressure. Your techniques work because they've been tested in sparring and in competition against people moving faster and harder and more creatively than you anticipated. Your distance management works because distance management failures result in getting kicked in the ribs or elbowed in the face. Your clinch work is real because the clinch is where Muay Thai actually happens, where power is generated from close range, where you control someone who's actively trying to escape. But no ground game. You know that. A Muay Thai fighter isn't delusional about getting taken down. They understand that grappling is outside their realm. They've trained their strikes to be devastating. They've trained their clinch to be oppressive. But they know that if they end up on their back, they're in trouble. That knowledge is built into their training. They defend takedowns, they maintain distance, they stay standing because that's where their skill is. They're not surprised when they get taken down because they know that's possible. That honest assessment of capability creates a fighter who is dangerous in their domain and respectful of domains where they haven't trained. The Muay Thai person isn't more complete than the BJJ person. They're just dangerous in a different range. They know what works because they've tested it against real pressure hundreds of times. Sambo. Sambo was built for this. It was designed in the Soviet Union for military combat where soldiers would face opponents with different training backgrounds, different styles, different strategies. So Sambo wasn't built around specialization. It was built around having answers in multiple ranges, strikes and throws and submissions all in one system. Pressure tested from the beginning because it was designed for military hand-to-hand combat. When you train Sambo, you're not training theory. You're training a system that was built to work against multiple combat styles simultaneously. The Sambo fighter steps into MMA without shock because they've already trained striking and grappling together. They understand how takedowns change when the opponent is also throwing strike. They understand how strikes land differently when someone is threatening a takedown. They understand how submissions work when someone has trained to avoid them because their training partner has been trained to avoid them. Everything is integrated. Everything is tested against resistance. No false confidence, no gaps you don't know about, just honest preparation. Khabib Nurmagomedov didn't revolutionize MMA because he was the best wrestler or the best striker or the best submission artist. He did it because his Sambo foundation forced him to be functional in every range simultaneously, and he had the discipline to keep training and keep improving on that foundation. Islam Makhachev the same. Fedor Emelianenko the same. They didn't come out of Sambo as complete fighters, but Sambo gave them a starting point where they weren't delusional about their capabilities, and they weren't shocked when they stepped into competition. That's the difference. Sambo creates fighters who are dangerous because they understand that there's always someone better at each individual skill, and the way to win is to be good enough at everything that you can't be exploited in any range. It creates humility and competence simultaneously. That's the most dangerous thing there is. The pattern is brutal. The most dangerous people are the ones who know exactly what they're good at and exactly what they're not. The least dangerous people are the ones who are confident despite having no real foundation. Which one of these made you realize you were overconfident? Drop it in the comments.